US President Donald Trump has threatened new reciprocal tariffs on Canada, including a 250% tax on lumber and dairy, citing unfair trade practices. US President Donald Trump has also written to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, offering talks on Iran's nuclear program. More than 300,000 properties are without power as Storm Alfred edges closer to Australia's coast. Authorities warn the threat is not over, despite it being downgraded from a cyclone. We start with some news just in, and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol left the detention centre on Saturday. He was seen walking out of the detention centre waving and greeting supporters that had been waiting for him. This comes after prosecutors decided not to appeal the court decision to cancel his arrest warrant for the impeached leader. Yoon, in a statement released through his lawyers, said, "I bow my head in gratitude to the people of this nation." Yoon remains suspended from his duties and his criminal and impeachment trials continue due to his martial law imposition on December the 3rd. The criminal case is separate from his impeachment trial, with the Constitutional Court set to decide in the coming days whether he will be reinstated or removed from office. Joining us to discuss this is Megha Sharma, the executive editor of NewsX World. Megha, thank you very much for being here. Of course, the scenes that we're currently seeing on screen, jubilation for some, but also concern for others. South Korea remains deeply divided, but what do you think this release signals for the prosecutors and also for the current people working on his trial as to how that may go?
Right, it's a huge relief for President Yoon, who was impeached in January. This was because of the short-lived martial law that he had imposed on December 3rd. And since that, there has been a flurry of activities within the parliament and outside. There were a number of attempts, in fact, 3 of them that were made to impeach him. The 3rd attempt was successful and he was put behind bars. And now there is a sigh of relief that President Yoon will take, because he has been allowed to be released from detention. But that does not mean that he will come back to be the president of South Korea, because there are cases, there are criminal and impeachment trials that he will have to be part of in the Constitutional Court in South Korea. Again, it's interesting to note, because there was a massive support that had come in for President Yoon, not just from his supporters, not just from the people who were part of the political party, but also from a tacit support from United States of America. So there has been this tussle, because the constant argument that had been put forth by President Yoon for imposing martial law was that there was constant interference from North Korea and China in meddling with the elections. So that is the argument that he continues to put forth, even when he is going to be put on trial in the coming weeks in the Constitutional Court, where he'll be fighting the charges against him of impeachment and criminal charges as well.
Absolutely, and Megha, those criminal charges could see Yoon face life imprisonment or even the death penalty. So what do you think him and his team will be looking to do now in order to stave away those sorts of charges and punishments?
Well, keeping in view of what has happened in the last few hours, that his detention has been cancelled because the prosecutors cancelled putting forth charges of the arrest warrant, there can be a ray of hope for him that his when he's fighting this case and the prosecutors decide to let go of the charges of impeachment and the other criminal cases that are levied on him, but remains to be seen. But it looks like, if there is tacit support from the United States of America and lawmakers over there and the policymakers and the Trump administration looking forward to support President Yoon, could there be a possibility that he's brought back to power once again to preside over the state of the country of South Korea? That is quite the possibility. But because the fact that there was massive impasse over the past 3 months, because this incident took place on December 3rd, and since then he had been put on house arrest. There had been massive rallies countrywide in favor of President Yoon, also showcased the large mass support that he had been garnering over the past few months, and perhaps that may have also been the point on the basis of which this particular verdict has come, and his detention has at this point of time been ended, and he's allowed to walk free.
Yes, absolutely. And we, of course, at NewsX World will continue to bring you those updates as we get them over the coming days. Megha Sharma will be staying with us. But first, we head to the Middle East, where the Israel Embassy in Canada praised Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's statement made during such dark hours for Jews in Canada and around the world. Moving into Canada and speaking at the National Forum on Combating Antisemitism, Trudeau declared himself a Zionist and emphasised his support for the rights of Jewish people, asserting that no one in Canada should fear labelling themselves as such. The embassy's post on the social media platform X noted a shocking 670% rise in anti-Semitic incidents in Canada since October the 7th, describing this statistic as something that should keep us all awake at night. According to Israel's discourse ministry, last year Trudeau remarked that Zionism is not a dirty word, while advocating for a two-state solution to the Israel-Hamas conflict to achieve a comprehensive, just and lasting peace. His statement comes as he prepares to step down as leader of the Liberal Party, with a leadership election set to replace him.
No one in Canada should ever be afraid to call themselves a Zionist. I am a Zionist.
Now to Europe, and Russian airstrikes have killed at least 12 people in eastern Ukraine, including 11 in Dnipropetrovsk and 1 in Bohodukov. These attacks come ahead of peace talks in Saudi Arabia, where US and Ukrainian negotiators are set to meet. US President Donald Trump has called for sanctions against Russia, while suggesting that cooperation with Moscow might be more feasible. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pushing for a mutual ceasefire on aerial attacks as a starting point for peace talks amid ongoing Russian missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Joining us again is our executive editor, Megha Sharma. We do know now that the death toll in eastern Donetsk has risen to 14. And given the extent of the strikes that we've seen, Megha, Trump has already warned that sanctions might come in on Russia given their bombardment. He refers to it as pounding of Ukraine. Do you think that this latest escalation might lead to Trump action sooner rather than later?
But we've seen that Trump has been threatening sanctions and tariffs all across the world, and Russia is no different. Russia continues to face huge tariffs from Europe and from America as well through under the Biden administration. But it's interesting to note that the latest statements that have been released from Ukraine and from Russia, because Russia claims that it has retaken the 3 villages in Kursk region, while Zelensky has said that because the Russian strikes have pounded eastern Ukraine, so the agenda of the Putin government continues to be to annex Ukraine, and therefore in such a situation, how can there be a discussion that can be had with all 3 parties, US, Ukraine and Russia, coming to the negotiating table and discussing peace? On the other hand, Trump, who up until 12 hours ago was wary of Ukraine and Zelensky and spoke in favor of Putin and said that it's easier for him to negotiate with Russia as compared to Ukraine, has now realized that the latest strike from Russia is in opposition to what Trump has been trying to do, which is to bring about peace as rapidly as possible. And therefore, it's obvious that his next knee-jerk reaction is going to be to threaten Russia with tariffs and sanctions. But is Russia going to succumb to these threats is the question that remains to be seen. Keeping in mind, President Putin is also in favor of Trump negotiating peace. He's more comfortable and more trustful of Trump to allow for negotiations to happen, wherein the interest of Russia and interest of President Putin are going to be taken into account, are going to be recognized. But again, it looks like a negotiation is going to take place in the coming weeks, hopefully sooner than later.
Yes, and Mega, to bring an end to this discussion, do you think that now these strikes have sort of taken place in Ukraine and the support that Trump seems to be showing Ukraine, even just slightly, do you think this will give Zelensky and his team any ammunition in their talks that they're going to hold in Saudi Arabia with the US this week coming?
Yes, it's interesting because last time around as well, when the US always had traveled to the Middle East to hold talks about the Ukraine-Russia peace plan, Zelensky was not participating, or any of Zelensky's allies and government officials or ministers were not part of it. This time around as well, there is information pouring in that Zelensky is not directly going to be involved in the talks that are going to take place in Saudi Arabia. It's an interesting choice of country that has been picked by US to decide to hold talks at a neutral ground, which is Saudi Arabia, because just a few miles away there is Turkey, who has been time and again trying to bring about truce and saying that it can be a potential peacemaker in this deal, because many months ago, when the war had just started and there had been sanctions imposed and there was a blockade that had been put by Russia on the Black Sea for traversing of for transportation of the grains, it was Turkey that had intervened in the matter. It was an intermediary and convinced Russia to open up the seas to allow for these very essential food grains to then pass through the Black Sea.
Megha Sharma, our executive editor, thank you very much for joining us. The developing situation between Russia and Ukraine, of course, will be followed by us here on NewsX World. We now move on, and putting an end to more than a week's worth of mystery into the Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman's death. The chief medical investigator has said that Gene died of natural causes probably a week after his wife passed away. The couple were found in their home after neighbourhood security conducted a welfare check and saw their bodies on the ground through the window. As per reports, neither body showed any sign of trauma nor any indication of carbon monoxide poisoning, which had been an initial suggestion. While he lived with his dead wife for a week, the Academy winner might have been unaware of her passing due to his advanced Alzheimer's condition. The investigator has said that Hackman had significant heart disease, and ultimately that's what resulted in his death, adding that he had chronic high blood pressure.